meeting. I believe Dr. Bledsoe will be calling in by phone. He has not already joined. I haven't recognized his number yet. So I think he's the only one. Oh, I think we're still missing Secretary Johnny Key. He popped in. And Representative Gray and Dr. Bledsoe, but I think they will be joining us. We have no minutes yet from yesterday's meeting. We will have a combined set of minutes, I believe, next time around. And I appreciate everybody joining again after our meeting yesterday. It was very productive. So I appreciate all the work that y'all did. I did send out an agenda. It's not really much of a change from yesterday, just with a little bit more information on the agenda. So hopefully you had that. We did also receive a late letter from Senator Hammer, which I sent out like minutes ago. So if you can pull up your email, you can see that, or we can go over that when we get to that item on the agenda. But the basic changes to the agenda are just that we added numbers to them. There's Secretary Key. And we did, I did put a note about a request to return some funds. So we may have time to talk about that if the committee's willing and interested. Okay, so Secretary Walther, there you are. Did you have any changes, updates, or discussion that you'd like to have on the amount? I think yesterday we had 114.3 million left available. Was there any additional changes or issues? I did send out that spreadsheet that y'all had made. So if anybody has questions after having the opportunity to look at it, I'll give Secretary Walther a minute to talk about our funds and where we stand. Yeah,
the $114.3 million still is a valid number. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We will, as we go through this today, I'll give you the revised number depending on what we agreed to today in this meeting.
Okay.
So that's my report.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it up. Does anybody have questions regarding the spreadsheet that was sent out showing the funding numbers and where we stand? I can't see anyone. Sorry, hang on, let me change my screen. Speak up. Yes, Senator Bond.
Just one thing, and I think there was some email communication about this at one time, but if you look at that, the spreadsheet that was sent out yesterday, under the Department of Health, which I think was May 20 of 2020, the agency pulled back the 29,600,000 requests for vaccine administration.
Yes.
And that's still sort of a concern of mine where we are on that. Are we not going to need that? Do we have enough money? And I can't remember how we resolved that.
Okay, we have, I think that, I know Dr. Bledsoe has called in, he's on the line, and I think Stephanie Williams is going to be on the line too. It's my understanding from my discussions with Department of Health and Chief of Staff Stephanie Williams that the initial amount requested was 29.6, and we did not approve that. It is noted on that spreadsheet, but if you do the calculations, it's not included in the numbers. But there is a note on the spreadsheet because that was part of their original proposal when they brought it forward. But when I talked with Stephanie Williams, it's my understanding that they do need about that same amount for the funds for administration of the vaccine. But the question is, when will the vaccine come? And so she is talking with they're talking with their staff at Department of Health to determine what those needs are. But I'm glad that you brought that up because that is something that we do want to consider. It's my understanding the federal government's actually going to pay for the vaccinations, but the question is, how would we allow the administration costs? So Dr. Bledsoe, did you want to speak to that? And now I see Stephanie's just called in. She probably didn't even hear the question.
And it can be answered later as far as I'm concerned, but that's, yeah, I didn't mean to jump in. You just asked about the spreadsheet, so thank you.
No, good. I appreciate that. I did notice that too. Dr. Bledsoe, did you want to add anything? Go ahead, please.
No, yeah, this is Greg Bledsoe. I would just say that Stephanie would be the person that would know the details on that, but it sounds like the overview that you gave was accurate, but Stephanie could weigh in maybe after the call when we can kind of update her on that and she could answer specifically to Senator Bond.
Okay, that sounds good. And I see her face, but I don't think she's gotten connected to audio yet. So there, now she can probably hear us. Stephanie, I wanted to let you know, Senator Bond asked a question regarding the 29.6 request from the Department of Health related to vaccine administration. And I did relay the conversation that you and I had about that you think that is a correct estimate in the event that the vaccines would be available prior to the end of the year. If you want to add anything to that now, you're welcome to, or we can have a discussion about this later on.
Certainly, I think the estimate we feel is correct. The timing is the issue for us because, we've had some different timelines that have been reported on when we could expect vaccine to be available. So we're continuing to have those discussions. And I think maybe we can, I think what I understood yesterday is there may be an upcoming meeting where we report on spending to date and then upcoming needs. And we might have additional information at that time where we can give a better timeline. I think it's unlikely that we'll need 29 million. So it's a question of how much would we need. So I don't know if that helps. And I'm sorry I got on late and didn't hear the direct question, but Senator Bond, if I can provide additional information now, offline, possibly, if needed.
But all I would say is it just goes in, we have the 114 million or so left. And if we're going to need, say, even half of the 29.6 for possible vaccination, I think the question becomes, should we hold that money or, with DFNA, can they say, can we pay it out for vaccine? I mean, can we give it to the Department of Health to hold for vaccine administration? Even through the end of the year, that just seems like something that we're all hoping we're going to get at some point, whether it's right after the first of the year or the end of the year, and we want to have the money to do that. It's possible the feds will pay for a large portion of it, I guess, but it seems like we don't want to get to the end and have allocated all the funds and not have money for vaccine administration.
Certainly. Right. And I appreciate that. I think where we are right now, we estimate that it would be less than half, maybe less than a third that would potentially we would be able to use before the end of the year. The majority of the estimate for the vaccine project is for personnel and data entry that would only be able to be spent on the back end, not on the front end. So, but we are watching it really closely and really appreciate you continuing to be mindful of that need.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions regarding the where we stand with funding or the spreadsheet?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I would echo Senator Bond's concerns because to me, our number one priority should be healthcare, the healthcare needs of our state, number one, and then number two, unemployment insurance. And so I feel real uncomfortable not knowing those two figures going into this last kind of round of discussions. So, I'm just concerned about that. And then I also have a question on the other programs that we have out there, the Parks and Tourism and Heritage Program of 50 million. Do we know where we are on that? And are we going to need any additional assistance with the vendor that we contracted with the cities and counties? And if so, if we did need an amendment to that, would that go back to us for an additional amount, or would that go to ALC, or are we utilizing that contracted vendor for that Parks and Heritage and Tourism grant proposal?
Okay, so I know that the Parks and Heritage and Tourism grant proposal for the business interruption grant, the rules and the procedures for that have been in the works. They should be finalized by now. I'm going to let DFNA speak further to that. Those will be brought to ALC this coming week.
Okay.
But about the CTH funding.
Yes. Are they also handling this program for us, or just the cities and counties money? That's probably a DFNA question.
Senator, this is Larry Walther. We are amending the contract. We are about to submit it to ALC for review on Friday the 16th to add that to the contract, to amend the contract to ask them to help us with the changes necessary in order to do the business interruption program that Parks and Tourism is pursuing with the $50 million. We believe it'll cost about $2 million for the changes associated with the consultant, and that would leave $48 million for the actual assistance to the businesses. That will come before ALC on the 16th.
Okay, so you're going to include that amended cost into the overall 50 million.
Yes, ma'am.
So it does. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's move on into our proposals. We heard yesterday from DFNA regarding the request for an additional $5 million for pre-approved fund reimbursement for departments, state agencies and departments related to COVID funds, and that would be on the pre-approved item list. DFNA, go ahead.
Yes, again, that is the amount that we believe is necessary in order to pay for pre-approved items that have been purchased and I guess continue to be purchased by agencies like the pre-approved items. And we'll be distributing or dispersing the money that is required to cover those expenses for all of the agencies within state government.
I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Allen. Oh, there may have been more than 1 second. That's what I thought.
Thank you.
I did have one question, just
Oh,
real quick.
yes, go ahead.
Which goes back to the spreadsheet. If you look at the last page of the spreadsheet, it looks like there's under transformation, procure PPE for state employees. It looks like there's 107 million and change left there.
No.
Is that
Well,
is that a different line item, I guess?
Right. DFNA can speak to that, or even Secretary Fetcher. That was a different line item. Transformation Insured Services made that purchase on behalf of all the state agencies and then distributed that. Secretary Walther, did you want to give any more detail?
I don't know the correlation between the two. We got a discussion going on over here right now.
Secretary Fetcher, that's what
Okay,
the initial
I think what Senator Vaughn is concerned about, or is thinking, is would that have come out? Should that have come out of the $5 million that we set aside? But I think we voted on those, I think, separately.
Yeah, they were done separately, Madam Chairman, and apparently TSS provided a cloth mask for most, if not all, of the agencies, and that was, I guess, a one-time thing that they did in order to help with the procurement of the mask. I think it was just for masks.
They did masks, hand sanitizer,
Okay.
and Clorox wipes or disinfectant.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and they were yeah, okay. But that is not what we're talking about for DFA. This is additional stuff.
Right. So the reimbursement requests that have come through likely would not have included large amounts of hand sanitizer, Clorox wipes, or masks, since that had already been distributed by TSS.
My concern was just that there's still $107 million over there. So,
No,
Oh,
1.7.
I believe the amount's 1.7
Yeah,
million.
1.7, excuse me.
Go ahead, Paul.
My understanding is they took that to the M&R warehouse and they have distributed that out to the agencies. It took them some period of time, but they worked through that and utilized the warehouse to distribute that. And the dollar amount's 1.7 million.
Secretary Fetcher, did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, we are continuing to supply items on the pre-approved list to all of the departments. So all of that money will be expended.
Does that answer your question, Senator Bond?
Yes. I mean, they're all on the pre-approved list. So I don't have a problem with it. I just thought there's money still there. So
I appreciate you bringing that up. Does anybody else have any other questions or issues related to this request from DFNA? Okay, seeing no additional questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, no opposed. Thank you. DFNA, your motion has passed. Thank you very much. The next item we have on our agenda is related to the TSS request. I think that's the one. I just want to turn my agenda over. Yes, Secretary Fetcher.
Secretary Smith, we are going to hold on that proposal at this time, and we may come back to the committee at a later date.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. We will remove that and put it on hold. The next item we have on the agenda is from the Department of Human Services, Secretary Gillespie, regarding Hunger Relief Alliance proposal for $1.862 million. Secretary Gillespie.
Thank you very much. We walked through this one yesterday. It is for the Hunger Relief Alliance to be able to procure and then distribute out to the pantries around the state $1 million in canned goods, and then $750,000 in processed meats, or as part of their beef program where they buy the cattle and they are processed, and then a very small amount of $76,000 for administrative costs for the work that they do to do those procurements and then distribute these items around the state. Happy to take any questions.
I have a question, Senator Urban.
Yes, Senator.
So I understand that we received some additional funds through Arkansas Economic Development Commission. They came to Public Health Committee, and one of the items was over $4 million that they had given us a report on for food insecurity that would go through the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. So I understood that that was, from what they testified to, that would actually take care of this proposal. Is there somebody from the Department of Commerce that can speak to that? These were additional funds that they received.
No, I don't know if Hunger Relief Alliance Director Kathy Webb is on.
Kathy, Alicia Curtis had contacted us, and they presented to our Public Health Committee last week about different buckets of money and what they were proposing to use the money for. And one of them was for food insecurity, and they testified to our committee that it was over $4 million. And I asked specifically, would that take care then of the CARES proposal, which I'm for,
Right.
but the $4 million is a lot more than this one. So I'm just trying to catch back up with that conversation if something has changed with the Department of Commerce and Mr. Hudson, if he can answer that question.
We're here. Yeah, we could be happy to answer that.
Yes, Senator
Okay.
Jim Hudson. The amount for CDBG to go to Hunger Alliance is about $4.68 million, which is well in excess of the $2 million that would be asked for in the CARES allocation. So maybe it's just a question of just having a conversation with Kathy Webb about, is there anything in this proposal that's not going to be covered in the CDBG grant? But we think the CDBG grant's more than sufficient to meet the need.
Let us check with her and see, because this was for immediate purchases, and the CDBG grant, I assume, is over a couple of years?
It would be over.
It would be over 3 years, correct?
Okay. So it may be that that they are planning to use it for different purposes, since that is a longer term program. And we did remove the infrastructure funding that was contained in this one originally.
Okay.
Proposal included infrastructure funding, and that was removed, and instead it was replaced, since this all has to be done in such a very short period of time. We focused in only on immediate purchases that could, that she can get into the state before December and distribute out, and be able to be distributed out to individuals in the state before the end of this year. So this is a short period in which they're going to spend this money. So I don't know if the CDBG money over the next 3 years
can meet this need or not. I mean, that's the question is, yes. I mean, if the CDBG money can meet that immediate need or not, that's the question to ask. I mean, I'm for this effort. I just want to make sure we're just being smart about all of the dollars that are coming into us.
Let me try to reach out to her and see if there's any way that she can call before we end today.
That'd be great. Just so that we have good information. Like I said, I'm absolutely for a proposal to help the food insecurity. I just want to make sure that we're using all of these dollars the best way we can possibly. So we can just have a conversation about that. That would be great.
Madam Secretary?
Yes.
Is it possible that we can pass on this to see if Kathy's going to call in?
Yeah.
Sounds like
great.
Secretary Gillespie, is that all right? We'll just push you down.
Yeah, that speech was great. And could we also, Madam Secretary, could you forward to Kathy Webb the call-in information so that she can do so, if I can reach her?
And I apologize. I should have probably had a conversation with Kathy about this, but I was just going off of testimony from Department of Commerce on this, which is I'm very thankful for. This is a good problem to have right here. But I just want to make sure that we, if we can shift that and use that 1.7 million or 1.8 million somewhere else, then it may help us down the road.
Yeah, and just for Will Bond here, my understanding is what Secretary Gillespie described is correct, but I think Kathy can, hopefully Secretary Gillespie will be able to reach her. I think she is available to jump on, and she can clarify that for everybody. That might be the simplest thing, but I think the explanation given so far is correct. Different times on the spend, but she could clarify that for everyone.
Senator Bond, if you have her cell number, could you text her? Because I'm emailing, and so text is quicker.
I'll text her.
Thank you. And I have sent the Zoom link via email to her.
Great.
Thank you. It's the same as yesterday. So I skipped the proposal that's most near and dear to my heart for the Medicaid Inspector General's office. And I'll ask, we have Vice Chair Dr. Bledsoe on phone. I don't know if he can handle the vote by phone, but since it's my proposal, I figured I should not be the one handling the vote. But quickly, I'll tell you about the proposal. It's a request for $8,024 for DIS to create a portal for us to receive medical records from providers so that they don't put them in the mail and we don't have to go out and pick them up. And it will it will be a reimbursement. So Dr. Bledsoe, would you be willing to ask the questions or call the vote? Or I guess I can.
Yes. No, I'm here. Do we have any questions on this proposal? All right.
I make a motion we approve. I make a motion we approve it. Representative Jean.
Okay, so Representative Jean has made a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second, Senator Urban.
Okay, second from Senator Urban. So I guess we'll move to a vote now. All in favor to approve this proposal, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, proposal passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bledsoe, and thank you all. I appreciate that. Okay, and I do see that Kathy Webb has joined us, so perfect timing. Do y'all want to pose a question to Ms. Webb while she's here?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So thank you, Kathy. I'm definitely for these food insecurity proposals. My just question was from testimony from Department of Commerce to the Public Health Committee. They had testified that there was going to be around over $4 million for food insecurity that they're going to work with you on, and so just trying to make sure that we're, using all the funds that are coming into us the best way we can. So I'm just trying to see if that would cover this request or if there's a difference between the two, and if you can just kind of outline that for us.
Well, and thank you for the question. And I want to say, first of all, that I was very direct with Allison and Bill and everybody in the governor's office and folks that we talked to about the various requests that we made. So I wasn't trying to, request one place and not tell somebody else that we were requesting there as well. The first point that I would like to make is that in 2019, it was the first year that we had lower numbers in Arkansas since the recession in terms of food insecurity. So it took us an entire decade to recover from that. Second, all of the hunger relief groups are always incredibly appreciative for anything that you all do, and we would be grateful to get funds, any funds. Third, some folks suggested early on that we even make our requests larger because the need is so great. So we don't see it as something that one request or another would meet, as Secretary Gillespie said. And I also, as people were texting me and emailing me, I was jumping back and forth between those and the meeting, so I may have missed something. But this would be, the CARES Act money would be immediate, would be spent before the end of the year. And then the CDBG funds would be split out over 3 years and would help the food banks, it could help senior centers, it could help all sorts of entities as we begin to recover from the pandemic.
Okay, that's perfect. And answers my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve this request.
And I second it.
We've had a motion and a second. Senator Bond, do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I was just, it popped into my mind that, Kathy is my city director, and our law firm doesn't represent the Hunger Alliance, by the way, but we have done work with Kathy. So I just, all these disclosure rules, want to be very clear about that. Her nephew is a member of our firm. So, but yeah, we do not represent the Hunger Alliance, although we love the Hunger Alliance.
Thank you for the disclosure, Senator Bond. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or anything to add? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any opposed? I don't think that was opposed. I think somebody was turning on their phone. Okay, no opposed. Thank you. The motion passes. I appreciate that, DHS and Kathy and the Hunger Relief Alliance. Thank y'all very much. Okay, the next item that we have on our agenda is from the Department of Health. Stephanie Williams and Director Sharonda Love, both here to give us some more information about the Health Equity Response Team and the mobile health units.
Thank you, Secretary Smith. As I mentioned yesterday, the largest part of this proposal would be to support mobile health units, which would support the state testing plan and increase testing availability in rural parts of the state. Also, there is funding in this proposal to support nonprofit groups, and Director Love can provide more information on that component of the proposal and how that funding would be utilized.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Love.
Yes, so thanks for the opportunity to review the proposal today. The proposal would support 2 mobile health units, NYIT and Minority Health Commissions unit, as well as lay health workers to reach the Delta counties within the state, as well as our southwest portion of the state. Working with community organizations to support COVID initiatives, as well as marketing for our specific mobile health unit targeted initiatives. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions? Can't see your faces, so speak up if you do. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I got one question.
Okay, please go ahead, Representative Jean. I'm sorry, I had my.
Ms. Love, is this the revised that Representative Murdoch and Representative Allen brought in earlier?
No, sir.
So
no.
All right.
The proposal is, it actually addresses one of the portions of the ad hoc proposal that we received from Representative Murdoch for the communities in the Delta. They had made a request for testing in that area, and this mobile health lab will assist in providing those. And the other issue related to the testing in that area is that those community health centers had already received funding, and Department of Health was covering the testing for that. So this was looked at. This was developed in addition to that need.
So it covers some of their proposal on the first one.
Yes, I believe so. Director Love?
Okay.
Yeah, this is Senator Urban. I just want to say thank you for all that Director Love did on this. I mean, because it's very targeted, and there's a lot of wide area. I mean, between, places where there are small towns that may be unincorporated areas, particularly in this area where these mobile health units really need to be in action. So just appreciate her targeting this approach, and happy to second Representative Allen's motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Representative Allen and a second by Senator Urban. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Aye. Thank you. The motion for the mobile health units has passed, and the amount is $1,202,000. We appreciate that. Thank you, Department of Health and Director Love.
Thank you.
Okay, our next proposal is related to rental assistance. We have Secretary Mike Preston, Senator Will Bond, and Representative Andrew Collins all on. We had a lot of discussion and good information from them yesterday. I'll turn it over to Secretary Preston to present. I guess, tell us the request, and if we have any additional questions, we'll go through it.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, we'll be brief. This is for the rental assistance program, and just a refresher, the 10 million request will be supported with 5.6 million from CDBG. So the request today in recommendation to the CARE Steering Committee is for $4,240,000 for rental assistance.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I make a motion, we adopt it.
Thank you, Representative. And the second,
I'll second.
Senator Urban. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's wonderful. I like the way this has all worked together. You came with an issue. We were able to find additional funding for it, so it reduced the need for CARES Act dollars, and I appreciate that. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing the good work. The next proposal we have is from Department of Human Services. And this, yes, Director Kisa Smith and Cindy Gillespie. And if I might, it kind of goes to the question that Representative Jean asked earlier. We know of the need in the Delta. We know of the need across the state in the various minority and impoverished communities that we have. We had received a proposal and we were trying to see if we could make it better and see how we could actually provide the funding within the parameters of the CARES Act regulations and with the state requirements. So we asked DHS to work on this, and I know Representative Allen was very interested in addressing the minority needs. So I appreciate them working together, and I'll ask for Secretary Gillespie and Kisa Smith to just give us a quick overview of this.
We'd be happy to, but I guess first I want to see if Representative Allen wanted to set a stage for it.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Thank you all for this opportunity. As you know, the minority community has been hit extremely hard by C-19. And I think this proposal will address some of the needs in the minority community. It may not address all of them, but it's going to address some of the needs. And when Keisha sent me the proposal on yesterday, I looked at it, reviewed it, and I felt that it was a good proposal. And I want to thank Keisha for the work that she's done and Dr. Gillespie for working with her. So I would appreciate you all's support on this one.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Yes, Representative Allen has been so wonderful to work with. And I also need to thank the Rockefeller Foundation. They have been extraordinary working with us to develop this proposal. And I'm going to let Kisa take a moment to describe it, but without them being willing to be partners with us and in this process to help us ensure the integrity of the program and the way the money moves through and out, and that it is getting to the right organizations, we would have really struggled to implement a program of this size and scope. So just a word of thanks to them for their great work. Kisa?
Absolutely. So after those two statements, I don't know that there's much else to add, but as you all know, we did discuss this proposal yesterday. We did discuss the fact that, as we stated, high poverty and high minority areas within the state of Arkansas have suffered greatly throughout this pandemic. Equally, the community-based organizations that seek to serve them have equally been hit because of the low amount of donations, the drying up of other financial resources that typically come to them have not manifested during this pandemic, or individuals have just not been able to give. And thus it's been a double hit to many of the communities that need them, because not only are they suffering, but the organizations that they often turn to as a safety net are equally suffering. So as Cindy had stated, we are extremely grateful for the Rockefeller Foundation, who has a long history in working with nonprofit organizations, willingness to partner with us in order to not only get the information out pertaining to these grants, but help us vet. Really, they are taking the lead in vetting the organizations and the proposals that are going to be submitted. The one major change from what I stated yesterday to today is through conversations with the Department of Finance, we have lowered the amount per proposal from $50,000 to $10,000. We think that is a more manageable amount in light of the time frame that we have. But we are going to continue to work with organizations to move the money out quickly, because we know the need is there. So with that, we will take questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have
Question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Question. Representative Jean, are these is this still a cap of $5 million for this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is the nonprofits, will they service the minority community throughout the state, or is it still located in just a few counties?
It will be for any county or city that has a poverty rate of over 15% per the 2010 census. And so that's pretty much the almost the entire state.
Okay, all right. Good deal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Representative Gray.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I saw in the proposal some things at the bottom outlined that could not be expended or the funds could not be used for. Can you give me an example of what some things that the money could be used for?
Sure. So the money can be used for basically food distributions. One of the major things that we were thinking of, or I was thinking about when I started drafting this, is how many community organizations during the holidays give out food for those that are in need, who right now are not planning on doing that because they do not have the funding. Clothing donations have dried up. They have stopped. Services such as job search assistance. Individuals can come into these community organizations and state that they are looking for a job, and these organizations would do everything from helping them prepare for a job search, helping them get ready for the interview, to equally providing a shirt and a tie and clothing for it. So individuals who have lost jobs due to COVID would equally be able to have that resource back available. So it's varied in terms of the services that they would be able to provide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Allen?
Motion.
Motion, good, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. I think I heard Secretary Walker and Senator Irvin as well as the second. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Are there any opposed? Thank you. I appreciate your hard work on this proposal, and your motion has passed. So thank you so much. We will move on to the next item on our agenda is from Senator Hammer. I don't know if he is logged in. Yesterday, we received a proposal and a request from Senator Hammer for $9.8 million for the school reimbursement. I did receive a late letter right before our meeting started, about 3:20, that I forwarded to y'all. I don't know if y'all have had an opportunity to look at it. And so if anybody has any questions or would like to discuss, please, let's go ahead. I'm going to pull that letter up real quick.
Secretary Smith, if I may talk about this this proposal.
Please, go ahead.
Perspective to it. So since yesterday, we've had some questions at the department. One, the main question was, is this a Department of Ed proposal? It is not. It is a proposal from legislators, but let me give some background. You know, as the governor did with all the agencies, he asked us to be looking at issues and needs that might qualify for CARES Act funding. And a number of months ago, we saw that this was possibly an issue that would happen with the schools. At the time, we only had estimates, and the estimate that we provided the governor that it looked like a $22 million gap of funding that our schools were facing at the time. But we said that we needed to monitor it because it would be a few months before we had firm numbers. We could only provide an estimate at the time. So we continue to monitor. We continue to update the governor's office on what we were seeing. In the meantime, I think districts reached out to some members of the General Assembly, specifically Dr. Walters at Bryant reached out to Senator Hammer, and Senator Hammer took up the mantle along with some of his colleagues. So rather than making this, and I think then he early on sent a letter that at the time, a letter to the CARES Act committee that at the time did not have a dollar amount attached to it, but it was something he kind of wanted us to put in on our radar. At that point, we kind of worked in support to provide him information that as we were getting that those updated numbers, we provided that information to Senator Hammer, and really just left it as a legislative request rather than pushing forward as it being a department request. So now that the last fiscal year and school year, all of the totals are in. The 9.8 million is, as you heard yesterday from my CFO, Greg Rogers, that's the number that we're looking at. The only thing that I would propose today, and we are in support of this, but we would propose that the funding sources be modified. You all approved for us a $20 million allotment of CARES Act funding for teacher school employee COVID leave. We are monitoring that very closely, but as of right now, we have only dispersed a little over $600,000 of that 20 million to schools in response to teachers being on leave due to either being positive or being a close contact and having quarantine. We are confident that we could move $4.9 million of that 20 to meet part of this request, and then the remaining $4.9 million coming from unallocated CARES Act funds. So it meets the request that Senator Hammer and other legislators have issued, but it also takes some of that from what we believe will be funds that aren't spent out of the COVID leave allotment. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that may have arisen as y'all have reviewed this information from Senator Hammer.
Thank you, Secretary Key. I really appreciate the hard work and cooperation with this effort.
Secretary Key, I have a question. What did you suggest we vote on today from the CARES allotment?
4.9.
I think to get the full 9.8, but we would reduce the 20 million previously approved by 4.9, and then a 4.9 new allotment from unspent or unallocated CARES Act funds.
Okay, thank you.
This is Senator Ervin. Just if I have questions, and I struggle with this one, and I see the need and I see what has happened here. One of my concerns, however, is that the spreadsheet really shows winners and losers, or so to speak. And so you have a different category that I could probably draw out that says, more schools, more rural schools had to spend more money on broadband and technology because their students didn't have that access like other schools did in urban areas, perhaps, of the state. So it's hard for me that this isn't comprehensive and that it's not covering all the school districts, because I could choose any category that I would like to try to fit this in. And so I guess, that's just my concern, is that you have some schools that are going to get funds under this and some schools that will not. And some of these schools of the superintendents that I've spoken to that will not get any of these funds have, huge expenses and needs that weren't able to cover it with their ESSER funds, but they don't have the ability to have that reimbursed like these schools do on this issue. So how would the Department of Ed address that concern for the schools that are not going to be part of this $9.8 million spend?
how are we going to address that concern? I mean, that's a concern we've said all along we're monitoring. We've asked districts to provide us information of regarding the expenses that they've had over and above, whether it be PPE, whether it be technology. We have also provided waivers for certain carryover restrictions from last school year to this school year. And specifically in the areas of title funds and ESA funds that are where technology can be purchased out of those funds specifically. We are looking at, and the governor also put forward $10 million for gear funding to support Wi-Fi hotspots, especially in those rural areas. And now recently the announcement that T-Mobile has stepped forward with additional hotspots that are going to be available. So really we've been taking a number of approaches to meet those needs. And then we used our set-aside ESSER funds to make sure that districts had a strategic reserve of PPE and cleaning materials and that sort of thing. So, and at the beginning of school, there were a number of districts that we were able to support through that because their PPE had not arrived. So, I mean, specifically out of CARES Act, there are no other pending requests for those types of items, but we have been monitoring that from the other sources of funds that have come in.
Okay, so we're going to continue to monitor this. Are you potentially going to come back to this CARES committee if there's something outstanding? I mean, if we have money left?
Well, yes, if we have money left, but also looking at the $20 million that was set aside, and knowing that exactly $656,876.86. That's what's been spent out of that so far. One of the biggest concerns that superintendents have voiced to us is, and the reason I think that so little of that has been spent so far is because they have found ways that when teachers had to quarantine or maybe even were positives, they were allowed to teach from home through virtual means. So they did not have to use leave at that point, but they have had to hire subs to come in and cover the classrooms. Right now, these funds, we did not ask for these funds to be used to cover those as allowable expenses. One of the things we're looking at, monitoring that, as we told you, as we move toward November, we would come back and say, if we have these funds left over, bring those other needs to you as a committee and ask you to allow us to shift those funds as appropriate. So
okay,
that's something that we're continuing to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? Senator Bond?
Yeah, just Secretary, just to follow up on that, I think that my understanding of this issue from talking to Greg and others is that the districts were encouraged or told if they had their own food service people to keep those people on. And that's why we have this group of districts that they did keep those people on. So they have these higher bills than maybe some districts. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator, that is correct. And this was that was guidance that we provided to all schools to we were trying to avoid massive layoffs around the state in all sectors of employment. And the thought process for schools was, look, we're not reducing your funding. And that was true from the standpoint of state funding or the available federal funding that was coming in, foundation funding, categoricals, all those things. But what was not taken into account then at that time when that guidance was provided was food service operates out of separate accounts. Many districts now have food service providers, they have contractors, and so those contractors, when if they would have been the ones to absorb any layoffs or anything like that, if that was to happen, the school districts who did not have contractors, who were had district employed staff, kept those on. The other dynamic, and that's why it's so difficult here to explain, you think about a high poverty school, for instance, a high poverty district, where the reimbursement for up sometimes 100% of the meals they serve, they get reimbursed at a higher rate. And so the districts, in this case, that were lower poverty districts, like at Bryant, the revenue that they would have gotten became even more critical when they could not get reimbursed for the students that were not being served meals. And that was the shift. That's why some of these on the list we provided to Senator Hammer didn't really follow what you would expect. That's why Bryant and a Cabot might have been on there where a higher poverty district was not on there, because the funds that they were able to maintain really didn't have the gap that you saw in some of the other districts. So there were a couple of dynamics that were working there, but I'll remind the committee that at the time in the spring, when about 40% of districts around the country will continue to provide meals, about 90% of Arkansas districts will continue to provide meals. So that's why one of the contributing factors to this discrepancy.
So, and just to follow up, so I think it's not really a concern, this idea that there may be groups of districts out there who are taking losses in different manners. I know y'all are monitoring that. I think we just want to make sure that if we get, closer to the end of the year, there'll be possible money there for other districts. If they have a specific need, we might need to look at shifting some money to something like that. You're open to that, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. We wanted to see how the $20 million would. If you remember, when I first brought that, I think our request was 15 million, and there was rightfully a concern that since we did not know how school was going to go when we opened up in the fall, that there might be a lot larger impact on COVID cases and quarantines and that sort of thing. To this point in the school year, we have not seen that. But rather than waiting until December to put that money back in and use it for whatever, we would just reserve the option to come back and present some of those other needs to y'all that the districts are pointing out.
Yeah, and I agreed with that, the higher estimate. I think that was the right thing to do. And I know you've seen our teacher and staff health and safety proposal. I know you're going to come around on that before the end of the year. So teachers and staff are under a lot of stress out there. So thank you.
This is Senator Irvin. I just thank you for this dialogue and discussion. This is what I needed because there were so many questions that I had. So I just want to appreciate Greg for calling me today, Secretary Key, and just this fuller discussion, because it was just so very difficult to look at that spreadsheet and try to understand what was going on there because it seems so all over the map. But now I have a better understanding of that. Thank you.
Thank you. So
I have a motion at the proper time.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was just going to check. I was going to ask Secretary Key to let us know this is from the Department of Education, and the amount would be, I think it was at $4,100,000 or $4,900,000.
So two components, allowing us to transfer 4.9 million from the 20 million that was previously approved,
okay,
and 4.9 additional from the unallocated CARES Act funds that are available.
Okay. So I understand that, but I will want to make sure to clarify that we do not need additional appropriation for the initial 4.9 that would come out of the original 20 million, but we would need appropriation for the 4.9 that we would be allocating.
No, Secretary, we do not need any additional appropriation.
Oh, okay, good. That makes it even easier. Okay. But I think I have that. Do I have that correct? That it's So it's a complicated motion in my head, but I think Representative Gray probably can handle it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try, and if I butcher it, we'll let Johnny Key make it for us. So I make a motion that we approve 4.9 million of the monies that were already approved to them, and then we approve an additional 4.9 million out of the current reserve that we have in the CARES committee.
Thank you. Proper motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that recommendation.
Thank you, Secretary Walther. Any questions?
Okay, hey, I'm sorry, Secretary Smith, hang on. My numbers guy is texting me and saying that the exact amount is $4,930,730.
Yeah, exactly. For each side, or? Sorry, we gotta be exact.
Half and half.
Wait, what was it again?
$4,930,730.
What is that?
That's half of the number proposal, right?
So if you go to the letter,
We're gonna take half out of theirs and half more.
and divide
Secretary Key, is that the amount that needs to be split exactly between the two, or does that need to be the Department of Ed, what we take out of the 20 million?
That's the half. That's
the ask? Okay.
So
it'll be an even 4.9 million for you guys from what we've already allocated to you.
All right, Greg, you're on there. Go ahead and unmute. Help me out with this.
Yes. So it's 4.930730 out of what y'all have already allocated out of the 20, and then the additional, and then it'll be another 4.930. 4,930,730 out of new. So
okay.
Okay.
Half is what we're doing.
Thank you. I think the original request yesterday was 9.8 million, and the letter corrected that today with $9,861,458. So we divided.
Correct.
That number by 2. Thank you. Are we all clear?
Do I need to revise that motion, or are we good?
I think. Go ahead, Senator Urban.
So the 9.861458 and 33 cents divided by 2 is the figures that Greg just read out, the 4.930,730. Is that correct, Greg?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so equally from unallocated funds, and then transferring that money within your 20 million we've already given you, but we're allowing you to use it for this instead of the original purpose.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we have a proper motion. I think we all understand it. Does anyone have questions or issues, concerns? We ready for a vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? No. Good. Okay, that motion has passed. I appreciate that so much, Secretary Key. That's a good way to take care of it. Okay, we have one more. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yes, Senator Trent Garner brought to us yesterday a request for $5 million to assist small nonprofit organizations that provide mental health services to veterans and even to community organizations that may not be considered a larger nonprofit, to specifically target suicide prevention related to veterans. I know that DHS has been in contact with Senator Garner. I actually spoke with him today prior to our call, and he said he would be happy for us to consider this, and he didn't need necessarily to be on, but and I know Secretary Gillespie has spent more time speaking with him, as well as I think he said has maybe as well. So I'll turn it over to Secretary Gillespie.
Sure. Thank you. So yes, after the call yesterday, since Senator Garner is focused on mental health and, as you said, suicide prevention, which does include part of this also does connect with drug abuse and opioid overdose. We talked to him about two things. One was, could we include in the proposal working with some of the organizations like crisis stabilization units that are around the state, and them providing services to veterans as a part of this, doing an expansion of services in that arena for the next 2 months, particularly with the holidays coming up. And he was very amenable to that. And also we offered as DHS to work with him on developing the details of how this grant program would work, as well as providing the infrastructure around the audit, similar to what we're doing around the community programs. And he was very positive about that. So, because we see this as an opportunity to target a population in the state that is really struggling always, but struggling particularly with COVID, with mental health issues and the rise in suicide. So it's now his proposal, but his proposal in partnership with DHS, and we will be working through with him the details on how this actual proposal, on how these grants would actually be administered, reported back, and as always, if any funds remain, be able to be swept back.
Thank you. So the proposal would come from DHS?
From DHS with, in Senator Garner's proposal.
Right.
But yes, DHS would do it in partnership with him, like we have done with Hunger Relief Alliance,
right,
in this case, or with Representative Allen, around
the funds flow through DHS.
Yes.
And then the other question I would have is, will this be the services that will be provided? Is it specifically limited to veterans, or will there be a focus towards veterans, but
Senator Garner wants this to be specifically about veterans.
Okay.
So the proposal is limited to providing mental health services and supporting these nonprofits that work with veterans who may be potentially suicidal or in need of assistance in this period of time.
Okay. And I know we haven't had a lot of time to have the opportunity to review it, but to me, it kind of seems like a lot.
Madam Chairman?
Go ahead.
This is Larry Walther. I would make a motion that we accept the proposal that was described to us yesterday by Senator Garner, and additionally added to by Secretary Gillespie for $5 million from the CARES Act.
And
I'll second.
Oh. Dave Wallace.
Thank you, Senator Wallace and Secretary Walther, for your motion and second. Are there questions?
Senator Bond here, or Will here. I would just say, is there any way we could set aside the $5 million and have them come back with the specifics? It just seems like, like next week with the bones on it, go ahead and have a motion to set aside the $5 million on all these other proposals. I think besides maybe the DFNA reimbursement stuff, we've sort of required something in writing as to how the program would work. I don't want to pour cold water on the proposal. I get it, mental health and veterans, but maybe a motion to set aside the $5 million and have DHS, like they did with Representative Allen's proposal, present something in writing, and then we could formally approve that. Would that make more sense?
I think that sounds good. What the trick is trying to make sure that we get appropriations in time for ALC. And so if we have an approval from the CARES Act committee to make a recommendation to the governor related to the $5 million, I think we can draft a request for appropriation now, and then come back to the committee next week with the final information. And if at that time,
could you put your mask down? I can't see your expression.
Doesn't, feel comfortable with it, then we could ask it to be pulled and not brought forward to ALC on Friday. So I know that kind of sounds a little bit backwards, but would that work?
I'm fine with whatever. I just think we've sort of had the details or some details of every proposal. So I'm fine with setting aside the 5 million for veterans mental health and then having the technicalities come back before the committee, which I'm sure is going to be approved, but then we'll know exactly how the program is to work. And, you know, there may be some more input that goes into that makes it even better. So that would be my take, but obviously I'm just one member of the committee.
Obviously, I will be, I'll work with whatever this committee wants to do, but I do think, as Secretary Smith said, that we need to proceed with the request for appropriations before the ALC on October the 16th.
I have a quick question. Are we gonna have another meeting before ALC?
I had thought that we might want to, for one, exactly what Senator Bond was saying. I was actually thinking that might be something we would need to do, is like look at that again, even though we may go, I mean, I think we ought to go ahead and consider it today so that we can vote, so we can get the documentation prepared and ready for ALC in time, and then have the committee have the opportunity to see it again. And then if y'all are willing and we have the time, it may be good for us to go through and look at the other proposals that are still outstanding, to review those, but possibly not put things before a vote. One thing that I'm really trying to do is to not rush our requests to ALC. I didn't understand the process in the very beginning, and so I did not do a very good job of scheduling our meetings in light of when Pierre and ALC met. But now I've figured that out, and so I'm looking to where we need to meet 2 weeks prior to ALC to make decisions related to appropriations, so that the FNA has enough time to get the documentation together, and then the ALC committee and the peer committee and all of the legislators have the opportunity to receive the information they need so that they can make an educated review and decision on that appropriation and on the funding. So I guess that's my thought on meeting next week. And if you want to, we can. If you don't, that's fine too.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask is because of one that I have, put forward that may be time sensitive with a tier 2 of the already approved grants for meat processing industry for the Department of Ag. So I'm just trying to figure out where that's going to fall and when, because it's time sensitive, so that the money can be spent before December.
Right. That's true. Okay.
This is Dave Wallace. I've got something I'd like to say.
Thank you. Go ahead.
First of all, today is my 50 years ago today, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Army. So I've had 50 years of either being in the military or working with veterans. The problem is real. We see it every day with our veterans, and I would ask that we approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Long.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you for your service. And I interrupted Representative Allen. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you for your service.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have had a motion and a second. So are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
All those in favor of the proposal from D8 for funds to go through DHS related to veterans services for mental health and suicide prevention, and also to the crisis stabilization units, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Aye. Thank you. We have one opposed. And that's it. Okay. Thank you. The motion has passed. And I think we have one more, we have two items to discuss. One is if we would be willing to consider a request to return funding today from the Department of Human Services. It's on the agenda number 4. We did not discuss it yesterday. Well, we sort of did, but the information was presented to you. And then we need to discuss whether we're going to have a meeting next week, and we can go ahead and make that set so that we're not calling you 2 days before to announce that. So it's the committee's pleasure to hear the request from DHS to return $6,603,405 and to revise the emergency.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Jean, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone opposed to having that heard? I'll turn it over to Secretary Gillespie if not. Thank you. Go ahead, Secretary.
Thank you very much. You will remember this emergency response approval that we got shortly after this committee came into existence for $23.4 million. This was to provide over basically a 2-month period, a way for groups of providers that at that time were not getting reimbursements from the federal, getting funding from the federal government, to be able to get reimbursed for costs such as PPE and the reconfiguring of offices and the shift that they were all having to make. Out of that funding, once we had ended that period and closed it out and gotten all the receipts in, we had less than $2 million, as you will see, that had been requested. We began hearing from a lot of providers in the state about their need for additional support. On a practical level, part of what had also happened, as you will remember, is when we made this shift, if you'll notice the groups of providers eligible for this, such as independent physicians and a lot of the groups that EIDT centers, early intervention day treatment, adult day treatment, et cetera. A lot of those groups in that first period of the pandemic closed operations. So they did not need these resources. Then they all began to reopen and the resources were not there for them. So that's a part of what we're looking at. The second piece we're looking at connected to this, and then a lot of them began to make a shift to telemedicine, which is how they've continued to provide services, but there are costs incurred around that. You have seen some proposals come before this committee from some of the minority physician groups and dentist groups around this. The other part of this proposal that is before you is that we also realized that there was a group of providers that got missed in that first wave. And those are the providers that are doing home health work, that are going home and community-based services work. They're going into the homes of the elderly and those with physical disabilities to help them. They continued working through that period. As you'll remember, the committee did approve and they did receive worker payments. Through Medicaid, they received worker payments to that point. And those caregivers continued going into those homes. We also have the assisted living facilities and the intermediate care facilities that are out there. And they continued obviously providing support because they have residents who live in those facilities 24/7. And they were not eligible in that first tranche. So what we are proposing to do, if you would all agree, is to add those providers that were not included at in that first period up through from March 18th through May 30th, add them in and make them eligible to send us for receipts and be reimbursed for expenses they incurred in that period. We have talked to a number of them and they have significant expenses that they incurred, for example, purchasing PPE and doing what they had to do in that period. And then to take another increment of the money, just slightly over $10 million, and make it available for all the providers that are in this proposal, the added ones and the ones that were there originally, to send in requests for reimbursement for expenses that they've incurred from May 31st, and we would take it through November 15th. Most of them, what we hear is that the expenses they're incurring are around this shift to telemedicine and of course ongoing PPE costs. So we would propose to do that. Now, if every provider were to actually send in a request for reimbursement in that period, they would each only get a maximum of $2,000 reimbursed. So what we're proposing to do is to say, send in your eligible expenses. And then what we're going to do is after November 15th, once we have them all, we will reimburse equitably up to the point we run out of that pot of money. So in other words, if somebody sent in $5,000 in eligible expenses and someone else sent in $7,000 in eligible expenses, if the money is there, we will reimburse both up to the 5 and then continue reimbursing the person who had $7,500 up to the point that the money gives out. So that's what we're proposing to do with this. And then that would leave a little over 6.6 million that we would propose today going ahead and returning back to the CARES Committee for reallocation. So it is a request to basically be able to use a portion of the unexpended funds in a slightly different way to still serve the provider community and help them to serve, and then to go ahead and return a portion for reallocation. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That's very good. That was a lot of information. And I just wanted to kind of recap quickly. Initially, y'all had, what was it? I think it was 24 million.
23.4.
23.4. I had the number backwards. 23.4, and you spent a little over $1 million. And so what we're doing is extending the time frame, adding additional types of providers, making some other changes in answer to some of the minority requests that we received. We had a minority request from the ADMPA, the Dentist Medical Providers Pharmacists Association, and that related to telemedicine, and also the request from the Delta was asking for assistance for telemedicine funding. So what they're doing is returning 6.6 million. So it basically reduces the original that we had out as 23 million, reducing it down to about 17-ish million. What questions does anybody have?
And I will point, just to add to that, I will point out, we do calls every other week with each of the different types of provider groups in general around issues going on. And while these other provider groups have not, while all the providers have not submitted to the CARES Committee, this is something we hear from everyone constantly, is that they are struggling to be able to get the PPE, to pay for these costs, to pay for the switch to telemedicine, et cetera. It's a pretty uniform issue being raised to us by the provider community.
Thank you. Questions? No questions? Does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that. Representative Gray, thank you for the second. Representative Jean, thank you for the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm for it. I just want to clarify the motion, which is to allow for a transfer of previously approved funds in the amount of $6,603,405. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this isn't money coming back to the CARES money, it's just transferring it. Is that correct?
The $6,603,405 will come back into the CARES Act fund for us to be able to utilize that funding in some other capacity.
Okay, thank you.
So we've reduced the original approval of 23.4 million by that 6.6.
Right. This would now be a 16.821,595 total.
Okay, got it. With the purpose of telemedicine and PPE. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We've clarified the motion. Are y'all ready for vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, Motion has passed. I appreciate that. Thank y'all for doing that. And Cindy, thanks for returning some funds so that we can use it in the capacity. Yes, Senator Bond.
I was just going to say, and going back to the veterans proposal, you said there was one no vote. I just wanted to be clear that wasn't me, since I was the only one asking the question. I don't know what everybody thought about there. I voted in favor of that proposal. But the one thing I do think is important on that proposal, we've approved, set aside the money and approved that. But I think it would be helpful for us all to know what that proposal entails, so we can make sure, the providers or whoever understands that. So just wanted to be clear on that.
Thank you.
We will bring it.
Representative Allen, go ahead.
Let the record reflect that I was not a no.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary,
Yes.
I think the vote was actually a yes vote that was just late in coming.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I would like to let you know that we have approved $27.3 million in CARES Act money, and that will leave a $87 million in to be available for allocation.
Be distributed. Okay. Thank you. And that includes the 6 that we brought back.
Larry,
Yes, sir.
is that including the $6 million that we got just returned?
Yes, sir.
No.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
He's added it in.
Hey, boys, the DFNA get together now.
I had added it back in before. That's in the 114.
Thank you. Dr. Bledsoe has a question.
Hey, Secretary Smith. Yeah, I agree with what Secretary Walther just said, that I think that one vote that was counted as an opposed was actually a late yes vote.
Okay.
And I voted in favor of the proposal as well. And I think Secretary Walther actually had the right perspective on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So I do want to, before we close, I wanted us to make sure we have a plan for our next meeting. I hadn't really been good at doing that in our previous meeting, but I do think we should meet next week if y'all are willing. I would like the idea of bringing back the proposal that DHS is working on with the veterans so that we can see that. And if we have any concerns about that, I think we need to be secure prior to it going before ALC. The other thing is, I think we have a couple of other proposals that have been requested. I know Senator Irvin mentioned just a minute ago and last meeting about the request for additional funding for the meat processing proposal. We had approved $5 million for grants for meat processors to be able to become FDA approved. They received over $33 million in requests. So they're now making a request in an additional amount of, I think it's 5.8 million or 5.4 million to provide funding for those. And then that will help in the food insecurity across the state. We also, I have not asked CFNA or Secretary Hurst, or if y'all are even interested, but I know that they have everything finalized, or will have everything finalized related to the business interruption grant. And so if we would like to have an update on that, I think that might be helpful because that way we can help to spread the information on it. And I would probably, that's what I'd like to add that to the agenda to have either Secretary Hurst or maybe DFNA to come in and explain where that is and how that's actually going to work, the $50 million that we allowed for that. So those are kind of the things on my mind. I know we did talk about looking at that spreadsheet and seeing where our dollars that we, may, like Secretary Gillespie has done, that there may be money that won't be utilized, as well as Secretary Key. I really appreciate that. That's where we need to be. That's one of the things we need to be looking at is, are there additional funds out there that we can utilize somewhere else? I'll also ask Stephanie Williams to see if maybe we can get a better idea on the figure for the vaccination administration, because it'd be good for us to know if we need to be setting aside 20 million or 15 million or less for that. So is there anything else that I have?
Yes, Yes, Department of Commerce on unemployment insurance.
Yes, thank you.
We need to add that to the agenda for next week because that's going to come before ALC, I believe, October 16.
Okay.
And I'm still begging for the health and safety payments for teachers and staff to be considered.
Okay. Okay. We can discuss that.
Did Senator Irvin say that we needed to consider the unemployment insurance trust fund money for next week?
No, the unemployment, not the trust fund, but the unemployment additional payments.
The amount that we need in from CARES for the request that's going to go before ALC on Friday?
Yes, for the extended unemployment benefits.
Right.
Or the state match.
I don't think that was the intent of this process would be to get it before we ask for it at ALC.
Oh, okay. Well, I just thought it might be helpful for us to make sure we have enough money there. If it's approved at ALC, that we have enough money, you know what I mean, left to make sure we cover it. I'm just concerned about it.
Yeah, we have 87 set aside right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Representative Gray, did you have something to add?
Yes, thank you. And that's on the meat processing. I wrote a letter along with Dean Bott and essentially in favor and asking for that additional money as well. So my only concern with meeting next week is if we don't get this on the, say if it were approved and we don't get it on the agenda for ALC next week, we're looking at mid-October, and then there won't be enough time to actually spend the money within that next 30 days. So I just ask you to please be mindful of that when setting the meeting next week.
Okay. Secretary Walther, how would you like to handle that?
Are you still talking about the unemployment insurance?
No, we've moved on. We've moved back to meat processing.
Oh, how much is it? 5?
5.5.
Yeah, I don't know what the spend rate is on that money. I've not seen that request. Have y'all seen it?
So my understanding is that they had $5 million in their grant program, and they received 33 million in requests. And so Secretary Ward has done a lot of calculations and reviews of all of the proposals that they've received and has made a determination that if they get this I'm trying to pull it up here. So I have the exact amount.
I can speak to it. It's okay. So there's 2 tiers. So they boiled it down. There was over 30 million that was requested. They boiled that down for the 5 million distribution based on a 15 facility awarded 79.778% of their total request. I mean, there's a lot of information here, but the additional request for like a tier 2 funding is $5,453,471.87. And they feel like those are true, they are valid, very good applications for all the different various reasons. And I could forward this to the committee. That's why I was asking. I wanted the committee to be able to review this information from Secretary Ward, because I feel like they took over $30 million in request and boiled it down to very good numbers. So it would be an additional 5.453471.87 request.
Senator, this is Larry again. It sounds like once that money would be distributed to them, they would be able to spend it immediately because they know who the recipients will be. Is that correct?
I believe so. That may question for Wes Ward.
Okay.
I have emailed that out to everyone, and if you want me to share my screen, I can show it to you right now. I think Jeremy can open this up so I can share this. This fancy technology going on here.
I can read it.
Oh, no, Secretary Smith.
Thank you.
And might I address Larry Walther for just a moment on what he just said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. To what you said, my concern is, so if these meat processing plants, if they don't actually have to expend the money themselves by the end of December, and it just has to be that the agency disperses it to them, then I'm fine, and I don't feel that there's such a rush. I was just under the impression that they actually had to spend it themselves by the end of December.
That is correct. They do have to spend it by the end of the year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why this is a time issue. I mean, if everybody sees it, and I'll ask for a motion, I'll make a motion to add.
Today?
If y'all would, I guess if you would, if y'all are willing and interested in hearing that, I guess we could. Can you, I shared my screen.
I see it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. If y'all can see that. I mean, if the committee is comfortable and wants to hear this as a motion, that's fine, but I don't want to push this if that, I don't want to make y'all uncomfortable. I know that's something
I'll speak a little bit better about it. So the meat processing industry in the state of Arkansas is not where it should be. And this is a really long-term benefit for this money because of the food interruption. I'm sure people remember not having beef or, hamburger meat on the shelves at the grocery store. So, this impacts our ability in the state of Arkansas to really take care of our own citizens. And be able to grow the meat processing industry in the state of Arkansas to meet the need of our citizens. And so a lot of other states have done this program for the very same reasons. And if you discuss this with our current meat processors in the state of Arkansas, they are booked solid for an entire year. And I mean, a lot of them are, particularly your mid-size or smaller size meat processors. So this really gives the opportunity to grow that industry and to make sure that we don't have an interruption in our food supply when it comes to protein and meats. The secondary benefit for this type of a grant program is, we have the ability to, I'm sure you're familiar with Hunters Feeding the Hungry program through the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance and the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. So where people can shoot an extra deer during deer season and then donate that deer to be processed. Well, there's a limit to that because of our lack of meat processors in the state of Arkansas. So there's also that, added benefit of being able to have a robust meat processing industry in the state. We have people that often want to donate cattle, but again, we have a difficult time finding the processors to be able to process that meat for our food pantries and food banks. So it's not just that. That's just an added benefit of being able to have these grant programs. But I spoke to one meat processor who has a client that comes from the state of Kansas all the way to Arkansas, because there's such a lack of this, in our region. So they're backed up. They need to expand. They want to expand. This goes straight to the heart of COVID and the fact that we did not have meat on our shelves. There were over $32 million in requests for these grants. I think Secretary Wes Ward and this review committee did a phenomenal job of really looking at all of the applications and then making a determination of those applications and the viability of those applications, and came up with this additional amount of money that they feel like could be very, very beneficial for our state. So the ask is an additional $5.4 million in addition to the already approved $5 million. So this isn't a new grant program. This is just trying to meet the demand and the need that was out there.
So to Irvin?
Yes.
It's a continuation.
Yes.
Is that a motion to approve?
Yes, I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Thank you. A motion from Senator Irvin and a second from Secretary Walther. And the actual amount is that we see additional funding request is for $5,453,471.87.
Correct.
Thank you. So does anybody have any questions regarding the motion? And I'm going to turn you back to this gallery screen. I don't want to do that because I want y'all to be able to look at this. I know this is a quick from the floor motion, so I don't want y'all to feel uncomfortable with this. Does anybody have any other questions or issues? It is something that we'd already approved earlier. DFNA had reviewed and approved the process. It's just additional funding to it. Is the committee ready for a vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Is anyone opposed? Okay, well, thank you. The motion has been approved. So that's great. We'll add that to our list of things we're going to request appropriation. Thank you.
Thank you to the committee.
So I think we probably will go ahead and meet next week if y'all are okay with that. We've gone over on our time today. We won't go as long next week. Are y'all okay to meet next week? Okay. I'll send out an invitation.
Yes, I'm in favor of it.
I'm in favor.
Request and okay, thank y'all. Good work. Last 2 days, y'all deserve a break, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yay.